Hello, I am acting teacher Michael Bean, and this is your free lesson for Monday, March 21st. These lessons happen from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific time. I am in Vancouver, BC, Canada, so the west coast of North America. That is a UTC -7. I looked it up, especially for Alex, because he's joining us today. Hey, Alex. Today's lesson, we're going to go over a couple of self-tapes. I'm also going to talk about the importance of moment before. It's something that has come up, and I just want to keep coming back to it and back to it. We're also going to look at the kind of 5 questions that I've been using for assessing a script. And if there's something in there, folks who are with us today, that sort of popped out for you that you have questions about, your questions help me, because otherwise I'm just talking to people that I can't see, and it's totally different. Where if I can see your faces, I feel better about it. It's better for everybody. So thank you for joining us live and in person. Now, if you were watching this and thinking to yourself, man, where can I go to find more of these? Well, all you have to do is go to myfreeactingclass.com, ta-da, and you would find all of the links that you need. Click here for today's lesson. You would also find the video archive. If you click there, it would take you here. There's a whole bunch of older videos that are sorted between decision makers, guests, acting, self-tapes. Just use the search function on this page and you're like, I wonder if there's something about headshots. And then, whoa, look at that. There's something that pops right up. And if you wanted to see the more recent videos, you would just have to click this link right here. That would take you to the YouTube channel and you would see all of the recent videos. Acting is Doing, Moment Before. Eve, you might want to look at this one. We did a whole lesson on the moment before a couple of weeks ago. And today we've got 2 self-tapes, one submitted from somebody who is a first-time self-tape submitter, and you'll see the fantastic setup on that one. And we've also got a self-tape from Natalia. We've seen a bunch of her self-tapes, and this is a practice self-tape that she took notes on and then has retaped. So we'll be able to watch the first tape from February and then the tape from March, and you'll be able to see how that has grown and how she took the notes. So thank you, Natalia, for submitting that. Yeah, and thank you to Patrick, who also has submitted a self-tape for today. A reminder that if you want to participate in the self-tape review, all you have to do is go to myfreeactingclass.com, scroll down, here it is. You just click on this link, then you don't have to remember anything. But send us an email at info@myfreeactingclass.com. Send a link to your self-tape, or we transfer the self-tape there. Whatever is easiest for you, happy to review it and give notes. Let's talk quickly about the setup. So this is the frame, what the camera sees right now. I am in a medium close-up. If I was going to back it up to, well, let's use Alex as an example. If we're going to back it up to where Alex is, this is what's called this is a slightly wider medium close-up. And then if we were to back it up all the way, to until you could see. Can I do this with my setup? Until you could see my waist, then you would be in what's called a medium shot. Now that's medium shots definitely as wide as you want to go for a film and TV audition. And really the only time you're going to use a medium shot is if you're doing a commercial audition or something that requires more of your body to be seen. If you're doing a standard film and TV audition, what you want is your phone set up vertical, not horizontal, or horizontal, not vertical. So like this. So that we're seeing a little bit wide. We're not seeing like big space over top of you. And you want to be in either a medium close-up or sort of here in between the medium close-up and the medium shot. So you got a little bit of movement for your body. This is something that I've talked about in past lessons, but when we watch, we want to believe that you're just a real person in a place, and this is what you're saying. So the foundation of the work, and I just want to keep coming back to this, is do we believe that this is just what you wanted to say? And that's just the price of entry. For professional film and TV acting, they don't want people, to be watching TV and thinking, oh, look at this actor who is doing a thing. You want them to be able to get lost in it and just imagine that person is there and doing their thing. So the absolute price of entry is, do you come across as believable for the style of the show? So you'll see one of my 5 questions is about style. This believable for the style obviously is something that's going to be a little bit different. It has a lot to do with your audience and who you're talking to. So believable for an audience of 6-year-olds is just going to be different than believable for an audience of 25-year-olds, right? And HBO believable and Nickelodeon believable are going to be somewhat different. You can sub in your own examples, but it often has to do with the age of the audience. And if you've ever seen live theater, that's one way to think about it. And it can be easier to think about in that way. If you're performing for a bunch of 5-year-olds, then you're going to have to make it more animated, or you're literally going to lose their attention. You look at parents talking to their kids, you look at performers who are performing for little people, and yes, are there some parents and are there some performers for little people who are like super laid back and chill? I'm sure there are. More power to them. In general, what happens is when somebody is developmentally not capable of processing complex emotions, the way that you communicate to them is by simplifying those emotions. I'm happy, I'm sad, because they literally don't understand the complexity of happy and sad and hungry and confused and excited to see you sort of all at the same time. Whereas of course we can have all of those feelings going on at the same time. So one way to think about that instead of like broad or over the top is how old is your audience? And if of course, lots of different folks watch any show that's out there, but like who's the target audience? And if the target audience is younger, chances are it's going to be more broad, it's going to be more animated, because it's literally going to be emotionally simplified to make sense for the audience, if that makes sense. Whereas if it is a show that is meant to be like super gritty, stripped down realism, then the bar for what is believable is going to be higher, and that's where you're really just going to have those lines internalized. So I'm going to come back to this a little bit later because Alex had a question. Hey, anybody who hasn't come to a live in person lesson, what I've been doing lately is before I start recording, I say, hey, what are your questions? What do you want me to talk about? Because you're here live and in person. So if you've got questions, you can of course email them to me. You can also just show up for a lesson and ask them in person. Then I can look you in the eyeballs, well, at least virtually, and tell you about it. You can ask your follow-ups. So this is the frames, what the camera sees. This is eye light. There's light reflected in my eyes. I'm going to give you a quick shot of Eve because she doesn't have eye light because she didn't know I was going to do this. And so you can see that she looks dead inside because there's no light reflected in her eyeballs. It's not her. It really is lighting. Lighting has everything to do with how fabulous you look, right? So Alex, fantastic lighting. Look at that bright dot of light reflecting his eyeballs. He looks amazing. We're like, wow, he's so much more handsome. And if he just turned off his light, you'd be like, meh. And that's the magic of television, is that, and if you're doing self-tapes, lighting is so important to think about because it really has an enormous impact on people's felt sense of, oh, this person is interesting and alive and pretty to look at. It has so much to do with lighting. So just try and make sure that there is, if you have a ring light and that's something that's accessible to you, to like purchase some kind of simple LED indestructible lighting unit. They are not expensive these days. You can get them just about anywhere, and place it just behind your camera so it reflects in your eyeballs. Great. Otherwise, if you can set up across from a big window, great. And if you have to, take a desk lamp, put a sheet of paper over top, like tape a sheet of paper over top to diffuse the light so you don't get such a harsh shadow. And that'll often do the trick. You just want that light reflected in your eyeballs. So eye light, eye line is the imaginary line between your eyes and what you're looking at. Boom, boom. We want to think about, if you're looking at a computer, it's like about the corners of the screen. If you're recording on a phone, then it's like the record button, on one side might be your eye line. So right, so very close to the camera. And one way to think about that is if you turn your head so far that your nose, the line of your nose starts cutting off this eyeball, well, you've cut off a little bit of your eyeballs, and that's too far. So that's one way to think about, like, how close is my eye line? It's a good test for that has come up in the course of these lessons. I actually got that from the parent of a student who showed up and asked some really concrete questions about it. Was like, I've kind of noticed this. Is this one way to think about it? I'm like, yes, taking that, moving it forward. Thank you, Claudine Ridley. So frame, eye line. You want the camera to be approximately eye level, because if the camera's above you, then you're going to end up seeing lots of forehead. And I've already got lots of that, and you don't want your face to be squinched. And if you're down below, then even if you have fabulous nostrils, we probably don't want them to be seen quite so prominently as this. And you can see that it's that either one, not only are they unflattering, you get strange shadows, but it's just going to take the focus a little bit. So you want the camera set up at approximately the same level as your eyeballs, which is the case for both of the tapes that we've got today. So I got to talk to you about it now, because I can't point at the tape and say, hey, here's the thing they did. In general, you want to be either the exact center of the frame, or if I'm looking to this side, it is fine to be just slightly off center. You'll see this on television a lot. It's called having nose room. It's not something I've talked about in lessons a lot, but it's just like that one extra teeny little bit of something that you can add, because this is the convention for television, is that if I'm talking to Eve and she's on this side of the camera, then I place myself just slightly off center. And you'll see that on film TV, typically they'll cut between like, no, this is me talking, and then it'll cut to Eve, and Eve's looking here, and this is Eve talking, and it becomes really clear for the viewers that it's these two people are having a conversation, and they're not and they're cutting back and forth between them. So it's just a convention that everybody is used to without knowing it, and they can take advantage of. So again, if we go back and look at Alex's setup today, you can see he's got fantastic lighting, just a simple blank wall behind him. That's really all you need. You don't need a fancy backdrop. He's got excellent lighting. He's got a light reflect his eyeballs. He's right in the middle. He's in a medium close up. Boom, he's ready to go. We would have to listen to his audio, to know for sure. But the only other thing I think really to think about is that you want to make sure you are louder than your reader. So particularly with Patrick's self-tapes today, you'll hear that his reader has very interesting voice, especially for the first one. His reader's got this like really interesting accent, and it's and like a little bit louder than him. And certainly, for me, I was like, wow, that reader. Oh, wait, right. I'm supposed to be focusing totally on Patrick. So definitely want to take the volume down on the reader just a touch sometimes. Right, we need to be able to hear what they're saying so the scene makes sense, even to somebody who doesn't have the script right in front of them. But you do want your voice to be physically louder. And thankfully, you can either just move the person who's a reader physically backwards, just like get them to stand further away. If you don't want to like give them acting notes, just say, hey, can you back up? No, even further. Yeah, like really, really go to the back wall, right? You got somebody really loud, just back them all the way up. That's totally fine so that you're louder. Especially for most folks who are recording on their phone, phones tend to be very sensitive about picking up the person who is physically closer to the device as louder. And so one of the classic mistakes is for somebody to hold the phone for you, which not only does it wobble, but then their voice is exceptionally loud. And even if you are quite close, then your voice will sound quieter. So the one more good reason to invest in like something that's at a little teeny tripod, or some masking tape and a stack of books, in a pinch will do just fine. I have done self tapes with probably masking tape and a stack of books, from a hotel room somewhere when I had to. Like the technology is super accessible. I just spoke with an actress in Los Angeles this morning. I was taping an audition, and my reader was based out of LA. And I thought that it was interesting that in Vancouver, BC, Canada, which is where I'm located, auditions have still stayed all self-tapes. There are the very occasional in-person audition, but it's very rare. There will either be self-tapes, and then there will usually be Zoom callbacks. And in-person auditions, are either completely gone, or they're usually for like the second or third round, if they're happening at all. And she said that her experience of the LA market is very similar. That in LA, it seems to have gone all self-tapes, and that if somebody gets called in for an in-person audition, it's noteworthy or unusual. She said that in her peer group, if somebody gets an in-person audition, they're like, hey, I got called in for one of those strange things that happens sometimes. And that is like a complete sea change from 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago, actors both in Vancouver and in Los Angeles were absolutely expected to be available. Sort of if they said, tomorrow, Alex, you've got an audition and your time is 2:10, then the expectation is that you would be there at 5 minutes to 2, kind of settling in and getting ready. And now it's completely switched to self-tapes. So there are pros and cons for everything, but it does mean that you can be a film and TV actor who doesn't live immediately beside an urban center. That's more accessible to you now than it ever has been before. It also means that you can be an actor and you don't have to have the kind of job flexibility or lifestyle flexibility that allows you to drop everything to have an audition tomorrow at 2:10 on zero notice, once randomly every 3 weeks, or and then 4 times in a week with no notice, which is how the world of auditions went previously. It's like nothing, 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 nothing. Hey, everybody wants you today. And then nothing again. And it's just the like strange nature of this business, that you can have a period where you're auditioning really, really regularly for 6 months, where everybody is just like, yeah, there's something about this person. Like, we just want to see them all the time. And then just like, wah, 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 like tumbleweeds, like nothing. And you're like, has everybody forgotten about me? Like, does my agent even know I exist? I haven't even heard from anybody for 4 months or 6 months. And neither of these things, unfortunately, like means anything about you necessarily. That's the strange part of being a professional film and TV actor. It has a lot to do with what projects are currently coming through, and do they need to buy someone with a face that looks like yours? And if so, then they're going to be interested in talking to you. It's also one of the best reasons to either like stay in class, have some kind of creative project, do theater, something that keeps you remembering that you're an artist, because there will be those times where like nothing is happening. And if you're doing whatever it takes so that you still feel like an artist during that time, then when it does come your way, because, if you stick it around long enough and you know what you're doing, it will. And it really helps you take advantage of that if you are feeling like you are an artist and you have earned it when it comes your way. That comes across, that kind of healthy entitlement comes across on camera as confidence. Unfortunately, actual entitlement also comes across on camera as confidence. Someone's like, yeah, I'm just amazing, and I deserve to be here. Yeah, does that work for people? Sometimes it does, unless casting or production gets a chance to talk to them for any length of time. And then they're like, whoa, yikes. Do we really want to be on the set with this person for 48 hours or for 6 weeks? Right. So I do have actors come in and say, God, like if only I was one of those like slightly psychotically confident people, like maybe my career would be so much better. And I just want to say that like, that might help somebody like deal with the initial nerves of doing an audition. But if you are not a nice person, this does genuinely have an impact on your opportunities to audition and work professionally on set. So I would say, don't wish for psychopathy, if you're not already there. And that goes back to the work of Brene Brown, who, if you have not been exposed to her work, her thinking about vulnerability is excellent, excellent, excellent. She's got a lot of great books out there. And her work on vulnerability, I think, is very relevant for film and TV actors, where we have to be believable. We have to start with our own actual feelings. And so if you can be open with your actual feelings and share them, well, that's a pretty solid foundation for the work. And she said that the only people who, she's a researcher, she in the social work department at the University of Houston, just for her cred. She said the only people who don't experience human empathy are psychopaths. So basically, like, you experience shame and vulnerability, or you're a psychopath. And that's really the only choice there, which I quite liked. I was like, okay, well, nobody likes shame and vulnerability necessarily, but if that's 97% of us, I guess I'll take it. Yeah, and as an actor, opening that stuff up is important and useful in your characters. So let's watch Natalia's self-tape, and then I want to show you the script analysis worksheet that I'm using. I will give you a quick sneak peek of the questions there, which are as simple as I can make it. Obviously, each of them kind of like expands outwards, but there's story. What is the story? What is the style? What are the relationships? What are the changes? And then what are the characters' wants? Right? Story, style, relationships, changes, wants. Right? It's 5 fingers. It makes it easier to remember. And then from there, you can sort of expand out as much as you want. But let me show you the tape that Natalia did for us in February, and then go over that and maybe revisit some of those notes, and then you'll see how she internalized those and what she did with them with her new tape. So.
Thank you, Jenny. classes. Sneaking into locked doors. Bullying a teacher.
Bullying a teacher? How did a 17-year-old boy bully his teacher?
By broadcasting a video of himself on the internet, making false and potentially damaging accusations. It's a slander.
I'm not sure broadcast is the right word, and it wasn't my video, someone else broadcasted it. And I did not skip class. I skipped lunch and was in the process of being late for class. Shh. Dave and Joffrey, both of you need to be quiet for the rest of whatever this is.
Exactly.
So what is this?
Look, it's all new ground. I understand it might be an adjustment. Guys, it's all about chilling out. Jeff, Mr. Erickson is going to let it go this time. But we need you at a 4, okay? Vivian, honey, some doors should stay closed. Can we all agree on that?
Sure.
Fantastic. Oh, and also I wanted to mention about our Kickstarter to upgrade our gym and a new lab in Science Wing.
Okay, so what do we got? We got the most neutral background that Natalia could find. She's often traveling back and forth, and so this was one of her kind of spaces in between. You can see she didn't have her set up. Yes, the light is not great. There isn't an eye light here. It's just like a teeny little smidge of one. That would be an adjustment to make. Something that she said in her initial email, she's like, well, I couldn't find a completely neutral backdrop. So I just decided to use the phone for my moment before. And so this connects to Eve's question today about how do you start a tape? Eve, something that I'm sure you're aware of, that I think is sort of worth coming back to is that casting is going to be making decisions about the tape in the first, say, 5 seconds, 5 to 15, and so one of Eve's questions before we started was how long should you wait before starting the action? How long should you wait before talking? Do not wait before starting the acting. The second the camera turns on, you should be acting. Does that mean you're talking necessarily? No. Your moment before, like in this one, can involve you talking on the phone, or you stepping in, or you shuffling through your papers, or you sort of doing something behaviorally that helps tell the story of how your character is feeling. I love those choices. I think, and if you want to go back and watch the acting is doing lesson, you'll find it on the YouTube channel from just 3 or 4 weeks ago. A lot of really clear, concrete examples that I gave, and I showed examples of students' work from class that sort of brought in behavioral ways of showing here's how the character is feeling. You can often use behavior to indicate that, and so I love that for what's called a moment before. Because I think that if they experience those first 5, 10, 15 seconds as believable, then that gets them into the rest of the tape. Typically speaking, people make very quick judgments or assessments, and then they watch to either confirm or deny those. And I think this is not just an acting thing. This is just absolutely kind of basic human nature thing. It's we're going to make a snap judgment, and then we're going to watch a little bit more to be am I right or am I wrong? So if you want to take advantage of that snap judgment, then what can you do to show us the character right off the bat? And so that's wardrobe, that's body posture, that's how you are orienting to the relationship with the other character right away. That's your physical behavior and how that's telling the story. And so you want to jump in with your choices. You want to jump in with your acting right off the top. Eve, does that answer your question a little bit about the start of a scene? Excellent. So if we go back to Natalia's first tape, right, here's that first 15 seconds. It's
thank you, Jenny.
Right, so we got the little bit of highlight. We got the blazer, which I think is a great choice for somebody who's supposed to be a principal in a school. We've got the finger that excuse me, I'm in the middle of something and you're not as important. All of that is sort of conveying status. Now, this came up in a previous tape, and I just want to show you quickly because Natalia, I know she watches these, and I'm going to show you that this is present in this tape and present in the next tape, which is I take the volume all the way off. There's a lot of extraneous head movement here. And I think that is just sort of where her energy is going right now when she's acting. Right, so they're looking at that, but then you'll see that as she's having the conversation, There's a lot of this like head tilting, there's a lot of the, right? And it's a really tough thing for an actor to balance out because we don't actually want Natalia to be self-conscious or stiff. We don't want her to be like, I must now hold perfectly still. Certainly there is a space at the beginning of film and TV training for actors, where often they will like hold perfectly still as a way of like getting that stillness in their body. Now, Natalia's not there, but I do think, Natalia, that it's worth looking at how much of this, like extraneous head movement is strictly speaking necessary to tell the story. Because I think that that's one of the places that that extra energy is going for you right now. And so can you put that into physical behavior, and can you put that into the relationship with the other character and how you want them to feel? And this connects to Alex's question today. Alex asked about the like actor gasp, which is a really dead giveaway. People do not typically do this in talking, but you'll see it in scenes all the time. And if you think about watching a high school play, like that's where it's most egregious, where it just happens like every single line where somebody's like, so that's the thing that I have to say. And that's it, right? So there's this like sort of audible in-breath, before speaking. And it's really just extra time to think, right? It's like, it means that like, I don't quite know what my line is and I need an extra second. Yeah, that's my line. And because it is habitual, it's something that stands out. And so here's my answer to Alex, is there's two pieces with any kind of habitual behavior where whether we're talking about Natalia's head movement or we're talking about this sort of like, actor, like audible in breath, is that if you can't notice it, it's a problem. Right. And so so the first step is noticing it. And that means that you're probably going to notice it after it has already happened initially. Right. So initially, what's going to happen is, after it's happened, maybe you'll watch the tape and you'll clock it. And then you'll get to the point where after the line, you'll be like, oh, I did it. And then you'll get to the point where like immediately after you do it, you'll be like, oh man, I just did that thing. And as long as you're on that progression, like, oh, I just did the thing that I do. Right. So it starts with like, there's this thing I do. And then it goes to, oh, I just did the thing I do. And then it goes to, oh, I'm doing the thing I do right now. And then eventually, just by paying attention, you will get to the point where you're like, I'm about to do the thing I do. Now, when you are ready, one of the things that you can train yourself to do is just pause. Because if in that moment where you don't remember a line, you literally just stay with the other person and don't do anything and just go, oh yeah, that's my line. Then the audience will be like, ooh, what's happening there? That's really interesting. And they're super engaged. It's only if the actor goes, oh yeah. Right. Or if they go, Alex, that's the thing I have to say, right? Like, so if there's if there's an indication of thinking, then that's when the audience is like, oh, it's an actor doing that actor thing. And so it is possible to train oneself in those moments to just do nothing. It just involves tolerating a certain amount of discomfort, because in your head, when you forget the line or it's not right there when you want it, there is often a moment of like, ah! And so can you trust that you can have that moment of panic inside? And as long as you literally don't show us at all, the audience can be like, I love that moment where you're really focused on him. You had all this feel, like they'll make this whole story out of that pause, as long as you're not leaning into it too far. Right? I can do it right now for a couple of seconds and nobody's going to bat an eyelash. It's just when adrenaline is in your body and you've got that like, I should know the line. Oh my gosh. That actually can get in your way. So it is possible that simply by like removing some of the felt sense of pressure, by knowing like, oh, actually in those moments, if I stay connected to the other person and do nothing, and find the line, that'll do the trick for you. And then also just bringing awareness to it, and that's where what actors often find, especially when they're doing the technical work of like, how am I coming across on camera, which is a piece of the work. It is important to have awareness of like, what is my face doing? What is my body doing? It's actually one of the things that I think is excellent about both Zoom classes and self-tapes, is that you get, if you're trying to do both at the same time, if you are trying to do both jobs of like, I'm going to be fully in the work and I'm going to back up out of it enough to like watch it and think about it technically, that's really hard. Like those are two, I mean, if you think about it on set, nobody does both of those jobs at the same time. They have somebody who just watches the monitor and gives notes. They have actors who are just in front of the camera and they have no idea what is being seen. Better to switch between those two jobs than try and somehow do them both at the same time. Often an actor who is like really concerned with how do I look and is my hand in the shot or not, will come across as a little bit self-conscious. But the ability to just watch the tape afterwards, to do a tape, and then like take a breath and shake it off and watch the tape and go, oh, okay, that thing isn't quite working. Here's how I'm going to adjust. I'm going to practice that. And then I'm going to go be inside it and just try and be inside it and then watch afterwards and see if I made the adjustment. Can be really, really useful and can help bring that self-awareness, right? Because that puts you in the like, oh, that's the thing that I do. And truly like once you're there, which, Alex led with that. He's like, hey, there's this thing I do that I've got my attention on. You're starting to get rid of it already, right? So you're on the right path. Where it's problematic, is if casting, a friend, a peer, a teacher is like, hey, Michael Biehn, there's this thing you do, and I'm like, huh? What thing? I don't know the thing. Because we all have things. There's tension. That energy is going to go somewhere, and often it's going to go into some kind of habitual face, voice, or body something. Let's take a quick look at Natalia's script here. So this is a script she asked for a practice scene, and I sent it to her. So this is something from my archive, and if you ever want a practice scene, you just tell me, and I will send you one. Right, Principal Schaefer, skipping classes, sneaking into locked rooms, bullying a teacher. This is pre-lap, and that means that's because this line happens before the scene header. So that means in the show, and you see this in shows all the time, where they're finishing the scene, the last scene, and then you hear the voice of the character from the new scene. Now, if you're the actor doing this, because this is where the scene start mark is, that's just been drawn on by casting. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't. But you would know to include this in the scene. Right, the Addams family, sits across from Principal Emily Schaefer, Fred tosses a glare, et cetera, et cetera. So the questions that I like to go through with scenes are story, who, what, where, when, how, I, how, descriptive words for the characters, moment before, moment after, episodic style, what's the style, relationships, strong feelings or opinions. You got to choose strong feelings or opinions, because if you choose like, I like them a little bit, they bother me a little bit, they're funny a little bit, then what often happens is once somebody gets adrenalized and they get that energy in their body, then because everything's a little bit compressed, that all the little bits get lost. Whereas if you choose really big, strong feelings or opinions, then once you've got that adrenaline in your body, you get just enough. Or once you're sort of not giving conscious attention to it, and you're just looking at the other person saying the lines, you get just enough. So that's relationships. Changes, how the feeling or opinions change. That's arc or beats. And then what does your character most want? Often called objective. So some of my notes for Natalia, in the first time we did this, I believe were, there was the head movement thing. Also talked to her about authority. Take a look at the tape that I got from her just yesterday. Okay, so now we've got a neutral backdrop. We've got a little bit better eye light. One of the things that I think is really interesting in the setup is look how much difference it makes without the blazer. That doesn't, at least for me watching, the blazer says principal, more clearly than this outfit does, and that shouldn't make a difference. But at least for me it does, and I think that that matters for professional audition. For practice tape like this, God, of course, like it doesn't matter. I think it is useful for everybody to notice, that like this sort of immediate impression, definitely authority, stern, right? She's playing with power here, in a way that's coming across physically. This, very first moment, partly because of the outfit, maybe says principal a little bit more. So thinking about indicating the character a little bit through your wardrobe choice, so that you don't have to indicate the character, with your face, voice, and body, can be helpful. Let's watch this second take of this.
Skipping classes, sneaking into locked rooms, bullying a teacher.
Bullying teacher. How does a 17-year-old boy bully his teacher?
By broadcasting a video of himself on the internet, making false and potentially damaging accusations. And it's a slander.
I'm not sure broadcast is the right word, and it wasn't my video, someone else broadcasted it. And I did not skip class. I skipped lunch and was in the process of being late for class. Viv, Josh, both of you need to be quiet for the rest of whatever different says. What is this?
Look, it's all new ground. I understand it might be an adjustment. Guys, it's all about chilling out. Jeff, Mr. Erickson is going to let it go this time. But we need you at the fore, okay? Some doors should stay closed. Can we all agree on that?
Sure.
Fantastic. Also, one thing now, I was going to tell you about our Kickstarter to update our gym and a new lab and science room.
Okay, so a great adjustment in terms of like she's playing with different ways of accessing the power and authority. And I think that if we were taping this, we'd borrow some things from the first one, we'd borrow some things from the second one. Natalia, I think that it's really worth paying attention, to that extra head movement, even if it means that you are like supernaturally still, while you're bringing your attention to it. I would suggest like doing a run, like this. And then see sort of where you can put that energy in, because I think it's important to feel like this is a person in a place doing a thing. They're allowed to move. You're not a robot. But right now, it looks like if Alex's thing is the breath, that right now there's a certain amount of like you painting with your chin that you're not noticing, and I think that it takes away a little bit from your authority, especially sort of when you end up like this, or like this. And that's a super specific note, but you've been submitting tapes for a long time, so hopefully those kind of notes are helpful, concrete. I really liked Natalia's choice, which I think was informed by these lessons of having different relationships on each side of the camera, right? So if you are having strong feelings or opinions about two different things or two different people, in this case, the kids and the parents, you saw that she tried to put the kids on one side and the parents on the other. In the first part of the scene, there was some like kind of back and forth between the parents that I think really could have been cleaned up. I think that if we were taping it again, it would be really important to go, for this whole chunk, I'm staying with the kids, even if the dad's talking, I'm staying with this relationship. And then I'm going to turn to the parents. So there's a different relationship of like, okay, you're the rich parents and I'm the principal, so I'm going to hit you up for money and I'm going to suck up to you, and you're the kids and I disapprove of your behavior and I'm going to be the boss here. And having that, I think those were both present in the scene, Natalia, but I think that you weren't quite as clear as you could have been about the transitions, and that might have given you like that extra little bump. In general, really nice work. Let's take a look at Patrick's self-tape here. Patrick, first time self-tape submitter, and right, like fantastic professional setup here. You can see like good clear highlight, neutral backdrop. Certainly, the character doesn't. Oh, let's see if I can find him. Right, so good clear highlight. The focus is on his face. He's in like slightly wider than a medium close up. And he's well lit, right? So this looks like it, either he's got a professional like setup at home, or he went into a professional studio for it. But you can see the difference, hopefully, that the highlight and having the neutral backdrop, the difference that makes, right? Just puts our attention, on his face and on his eyes, which is likely to be strongly supportive. So let's watch these first couple of seconds.
Dad, can you knock sometimes?
What? You a man now? And they're doing some mad things, so I need $1.
Maybe.
You right. I was here, you joins. Hey, and you better be strapping up. I see them cheerleaders be waiting for you after the
Dad,
game.
I can handle my business.
Look, I just came to drop these off. My news has a few companies circling about endorsements. Some little kicks to first for me today. Be good for you to meet with some of the new guys and coaches. Show you how to get to the next level.
Dad, I
See how your old man used to do it.
I can't make it today. Remember Jordan? I'm shadowing her on the job for a few weeks.
Is that today? Oh, so what another time?
You told me to never flake on my commitments. Besides, this is really important to me. I'm learning a lot.
Damn. All right. Well, you tell Jordan, don't work my firstborn too hard. I'll come looking for him.
Do you see what I mean about in that first scene about his reader having this really interesting voice and also being louder than him? So even the first couple of sentences, I'm like, I'm not totally sure I understand what he's saying, but I'm very interested in this person's voice. And so just a note when you're doing your tapes, Patrick, you have to, like I said, physically move the reader further away, or if they're reading on a device, then just turn the volume down. Make sure that you do a test clip with an early take, maybe one of your practice takes, so you can be like, okay, I want to be able to hear what the reader is saying, but I don't want them to be louder than I am. Now, Eve had this question before we started of like, if I'm reading with somebody, like, how do I give them notes? And the very short summary of the advice that I gave Eve, just in case anybody else is wondering who this is, I was like, hey, so you're reading with a friend, you're reading with a professional, and she's like, probably reading with my family. So if I am reading with a family member or a friend, here's what I do with them. I say, hey, it's really important that that what is happening behind the camera not be distracting in any way. So I know it's not as much fun for you, but what I really need for this, is for you to just do the just facts version. So not a robot, but just say it all fact. If it's got all capital letters and exclamation points and it says you're crying, just ignore all of that and just say the words. And that will often do the trick if I've got a reader who has like no acting experience. Because I think what happens is people are like, oh, I'm acting, yay, I'm gonna get excited about it. And then they're like, and then I'm gonna yell the words and I'm gonna cry where it says cry. And of course, all this stuff's really distracting. If somebody doesn't have acting experience, you're like, wow, whoever the like really enthusiastic amateur actor on the other side of the camera is, very distracting right now. So what you do is you get that person, to say, if the line is, I hate you, and the last I hate you is all in capital letters and has 4 exclamation points, you literally get them to say, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. And just qualify, like, yeah, I know it's not as fun for you. It's like, it's really important, like for me, my tapes, sorry, like we can read it for fun, once, if you want to just like let loose and let it rip, and then during the actual tape, just like you just need the facts version. And when I've done that, like when I've had a friend read before, I've had to like set that up, do it, and then say, actually, yeah, like I know it's kind of boring, but like even less, and I've you often had that friend be like, oh, fine, and that's where you just go like, yeah, it does, like, it's like, I'm gonna empathize with that experience. Like I'm not judging you. I know that it does kind of suck to be boring, but but for this tape, anything where they can't see the person's face, but they are basically like noticing, in something in the voice, that's going to be distracting. Like right now, the attention gets to be all on me. You don't have to say that last part. But for self-tape, ultimately that's what you want to do. So there's so much that's going well with this tape. Patrick wanted notes on his tapes, and I think that sort of top level, Patrick, your eye lines are close to camera, your setup is good. You absolutely sound like a real person when you're talking to your dad. So the place where you have that foundation. You've got the technical foundation. And you've got the foundation of believability. And so from there, I think there's an opportunity to show more of your personality, to have clearer choices about these relationships, because I was not clear about the emotional relationship with the dad until I watched the scene maybe the second time. And I was like, oh, right, this is the super macho dad, and the son is kind of shut down by it. So I would say there's an opportunity for you to take some bigger risks here and to bring more of yourself into it. Because what's happening right now, I think, is that this work is so believable that it does come out kind of on one level, and not, and so there's these little pops, and if this was a show that was utterly stripped down realism, maybe that's just the right amount. Patrick knows more about the style of this show than I do. And so maybe the extreme subtlety, is appropriate and exactly what they're looking for. So I just want to qualify that he has more information about this project than I do, but I do think that there's an opportunity here to bring in more changes. And let me see if I can find a concrete example, in this first scene, right? So, his dad kind of comes in, and is trying to get him to, and is trying to get him to sort of skip out on what he's doing, and instantly he brought in, actual prop here. It's a question that comes up in scenes all the time. Was it distracting for you watching it? I think it helps the scene. It could absolutely have been a pretend box that happened below the camera. I don't have a strong feeling about that one way or the other, but I want to point out that he brought in a shoebox for the scene where somebody hands him a shoebox. It's still not about the shoes, it's about his face. That's what counts, and if that helps him feel more connected to it, great. Some actors, can do mime and feel really connected to it, and some of them, it pulls them out.
Today, remember Jordan? I'm shadowing her on the job for a few weeks.
Is that today? Oh, Jordan at the time.
No, you told me to never.
Right, and so there's a good concrete example, where there's this decision point or this moment where the dad's like, skip this thing that you want to do, skip this thing that you've got planned, and do the thing I want you to do instead. Which, as if we get the chance to watch the rest of the scenes, you'll see is sort of fairly important to the arc of the character. And so really taking that beat and taking a little more time with it, and letting us, letting us see that this is significant or meaningful for the character, you're taking a little bit of a bigger risk. Now, I don't have a strong opinion of here's how to tell that story. Maybe there's a beat and then you come back and it is on the same level, and so the audience gets to see the struggle, but the dad doesn't. Maybe there's the moment and then it's I'm going to turn this back on you. No, dad, here's the strategy. It doesn't really matter what happens there in terms of change. I do think it's important to bring in those changes more. So, Patrick, my feedback is look for the strong feeling or opinion about the other characters, and then look for the changes. And often when I'm approaching a script, I'll approach that through the lens of what does my character want the other person to do or feel? What do I want the other person to do or feel? Right. So do I want my dad to leave me alone in the scene? Then I'll get one kind of scene. Do I want? Do I? Want to my dad to be proud of me? Do I want my dad to, right? Each one sort of gives me a different take, and maybe that one that sort of ladders me into, what's my strong feeling or opinion about the dad? He's loud and obnoxious, intrusive, or he's intimidating and awesome, or he's this strong feeling or opinion, and then how does that change? How do my tactics change? How does the way that I affect him change? Getting pretty close to the end of our hour, so I'm just going to show
The
you the rest of the
development
scenes.
progress reports you asked for.
Well, hello there. Would you like to tell me what we have here besides the new fall line of G-Bone Shea?
I mean, before I was just giving a taste, but now I'm leaning in.
Okay.
Right, so wardrobe, physicality. He's really giving us the story in the first scene of like, I'm a football player with my dad, and in this one he's like, I'm the fashionista, and in my happy place. And so the some of that is acting, and some of that is wardrobe, and he's got the earrings in this one. So I think that those little ways of sort of taking what's already there and amplifying it are just smart, like smart acting choices. Back to that, like, what are we seeing in the first few seconds of the scene?
Okay, I see that. I see that.
And in case you were wondering, or probably just didn't know, I'm non-binary, so my pronouns are they, them. I mean, I've been wanting to tell you for a while.
No, cool. Wow, I had no idea, but I think that's amazing, honey. So great. Thank you for telling me. And you just walked out of the house dressed like this?
Yeah, I mean, sort of why you told me I could dress any way I want.
And you can, sweetie. I'm proud of you. It's just, does your dad know? I think your mom would have been so supportive, but Lance, he could be a whole other alpha male intolerant story. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're not. No.
Right. And so that mumble, there, Patrick, they're like, you're not, like, I love the physicality. I love that you're taking time to take it in. I think that you anticipated the change in the scene there a little bit. And then there are these times, where like I'm losing your voice so much, that I think that I'm also losing some of the choices that you're making. And so just like continuing to bring it back to a connection with the person you're talking to, and what do you want them to do or feel? Probably that's, where I would start with this if I was workshopping it in class, so you've got a really good sense, I think, of the arc of what the character is feeling, and then just like connecting it out, to this person who you clearly sort of want to play with and impress. And then it goes into the scene transitions into sort of like her giving this, like, I'm worried about your dad, and how's your dad gonna feel?
I mean, I haven't found a way to tell him yet.
Okay. We can work on that together if you want. Your father loves you, LJ, very much, very deeply. And he deserves to know this part of you. But enough of that for now. Let's burn this runway up and get you to work. Come on.
Right. So the scene, has this, sort of setup of like, I'm delighted to be here. We transition into talking about a hard thing. We come back to like your, aunt trying to make you feel better. You definitely could play with those changes a little bit, and
Oh my God, LJ.
Hi, you have a 215 and I have your Doppio.
Thank you.
Right, there's the first 15 seconds, and scene 4.
Hey boy, what's going on?
Not much.
Man, your dad discovered some things about himself today. Tell you what, God always gives you a sign to let you know
Dad,
what
I have
happened.
to tell you something.
Oh, okay. What's up? You all right?
Yes.
Right. So again, it's possible that Patrick simply knows more about the style of the show than I do. And if you're doing a show where, I think of the AMC's, I think it was AMC's The Killing that shot in Vancouver for a number of years. Where like absolutely everything the character said was like way down here. It was very gritty and very dramatic, and it's like kind of everybody talked like this. Yeah, and maybe this is one of those shows, right? So maybe his performance, is really sort of like appropriate for the style of the show. I didn't ask the name of it, and he didn't share, which is probably for the best, because then we can't get him in copyright trouble because it's not going to be out there anywhere. If that's the case, it would be important to take the reader's volume all the way down. Right, so that he's louder than the reader, even if he is doing like a very stripped down, small, realistic performance. If that's the case, I would advise moving the camera in a little bit closer as well, so we can see even more of that subtlety. And then just as you continue working on this kind of stuff, Patrick. And I'm sorry we ran out of time, so I'm not going to show the rest of scene 3 and 4 in detail, but I did want to sort of show the rest of you the opening so you could see, okay, different parts of the character, and he's indicating that with wardrobe, right? Football player, fabulous, like slick professional, and then back to football player. Is that an acceptable amount of wardrobe for you to do for a single audition? Yeah. What's he really doing? I don't know. He's it's got 2 shirts and 2 jackets that he had to bring with him. I don't think that's a big deal. And I don't think, especially if you're going out for a larger part like this, that's going to read as trying too hard. Is it necessary? No. Is it sometimes professionally useful? Absolutely. And Patrick, take the reader's volume down, really focus in on that relationship if you can, and as you continue, and maybe in practice, if you don't want to sort of take those bigger risks with your audition tapes, it's a great reason to get into a class or do some practice scenes so that you can at least build the muscle of, can I keep that subtlety, and also really amplify or find places where it is more of a struggle, where there's more obstacle to me getting what I want, where there's a stronger change in the scene from this feeling to that feeling, or this opinion to that opinion. So that's today's lesson. Thank you for joining us. I'm acting teacher Michael Bean. I've been teaching professional film and TV acting for 20 years now, for really real. As of May of this year is year number 20 for me. And if you like what we're doing, what you can do is go to myfreeactingclass.com and join the newsletter, or you can support, if you feel so inclined, our sponsors, which are really just the things that I actually do to pay my bills and keep things going, which is Biz Studio, which is the school for kids and teens that I started approximately 20 years ago. And if you want to know more about Michael Bean acting classes, you can go to michaelbean.ca. They still feel a little bit awkward saying, go support our sponsors, because really they're both me. Although I have other people teach the kids and teens classes now, but that's what keeps the free classes going. I started these all 2 years ago now, and I'm so excited that they're still going. So next week, I want to start going into a deep dive, going through the story, style, relationships, changes, and wants, and just kind of one at a time, kind of go through each of those, and expand it out in detail. So I think, next week we'll start with story, and we'll just see how that goes. So come with your good story questions, or if you can't be here in person, just email them. Thanks for joining us today. Bye, everybody.